Less than a week after the Supreme Court opened the doors for foreign corporations to start flooding the airwaves with commercials to defeat any politicians who oppose them and to elect those who do their bidding, Democrats are now at work on a new law to slam those doors shut once again. Congressman Chris Van Hollen telling ABC News that he and fellow Democrat Chuck Schumer, of the Senate, of course, are already drafting legislation that would prevent foreign companies from buying or running ads in the U.S. for or against American political candidates. Staffers for the two Democrats met with White House officials to discuss methods of legislative pushback against the High Court's ruling. One possible scenario floated by Van Hollen on this NewsHour last night involves requiring a company officer to appear on camera at the end of the company's political ads to declare their responsibility for them. For instance, just to make up an example, I'm Halliburton CEO Dick Cheney. I approve this message. Get out of my way. The ruling came down after John Roberts, promoted by President Bush from his Bush v. Gore 2000 team to Chief Justice of the United States, took it upon himself to expand a case being argued by both the conservative group Citizens United and the AFL-CIO. The court's 5 conservatives subsequently issuing a ruling that went beyond even the parameters being argued in the case, the activist court writing new legislation from the bench, tossing out decades of legal and judicial precedent, including its own, to grant corporations, which the Founding Fathers did not consider individuals, the rights of individuals, rich individuals. Let's bring in MSNBC political analyst Howard Fineman, also, of course, senior Washington correspondent and political columnist of Newsweek magazine. Howard, good evening.
Hi, Keith.
Why the specific concern and seemingly the first concern about foreign corporations jumping into the American attack ad game?
Well, because even if you accept the argument of the Supreme Court that corporations are individuals for the purpose of constitutional law and the Bill of Rights, the Constitution protects Americans. It's not about protecting the free speech rights of everybody around the planet, as wonderful as that would be. And especially in the election context, if we're talking about influencing elections, which are at the very core of speech, I think that's an American activity, at least as regards American elections.
On the law here, if it is free speech, it's free speech. What kind of constitutional language or even free speech principle justifies limiting speech based on nationality, to ask the devil's advocate question?
No, I think it's a good question. I think the answer is sort of what I said, in that the Constitution applies to American citizens and people here in the United States. That's what the Bill of Rights is about. It's about individuals. The Supreme Court has now said corporations are individuals for free speech purposes. By the way, I think that's a question you ought to ask the Supreme Court, and they probably will be asked, because whatever statute Chris Van Hollen and Schumer and other senators, I know there are a lot of senators interested in this, come up with, if they manage to pass it, will immediately be challenged in the Supreme Court, and I would guess, based on my reading of the case, thrown out by the Supreme Court, thereby opening the floodgates for the very kind of thing that the founders, I think, on one level, were trying to avoid. They had just fought a revolution. They were just writing a constitution for the new United States. The last thing they wanted to do was empower the British businessmen of London to get back into deciding who the candidates should be.
I'll call the Supreme Court immediately. We'll have them on the show tomorrow night, and they'll sing for us right here. There is one really annoying juxtaposition here. How can the right argue with one voice that an individual human who is accused of a crime should not have free speech, even in chains, to defend himself in a courtroom, but a group or a company that, for all we know, is funding terrorism somewhere else in the world or here, should be permitted to buy free speech in and into our living rooms?
Well, that's obviously a very, very good question. But the thing to remember about this is that individuals who make up corporations, who own stock in corporations, have free speech rights, obviously. The question, and the question the court dealt with here, is whether for-profit corporations, not charities and so forth, but for-profit corporations, business corporations, could dip into the entire stream of their profits and use that for electioneering purposes, as long as they don't coordinate it with the candidate. And that's what's at issue here. And that's what the Supreme Court said they could do. Yes, unions can do some of this stuff too, but unions don't have the profit streams of hundreds of billions of dollars that American corporations do. And you could argue that shareholders would have their rights limited by this, because the speech that the corporation could pay for might not be the speech that the shareholders want.
I'm going to throw a curveball at you about the breaking news with which we led this hour, the Who Dat Gate, the arrest in Mary Landrieu's office, because we have a statement now, and I want to know if you think this is where this is going. This is from the Democratic Party chair in Louisiana, Michael McHale, who has stated, "This is a Louisiana Watergate. Louisiana families are shocked and outraged that these men would break the law to carry out their political agenda with this Watergate-like break-in and attempted wiretapping. Given his ties to some of the players involved, Senator Vitter should immediately denounce the actions of these four men and anyone who may have instigated, supported, or assisted them." Two uses of Watergate in one sentence from the chairman there. Pretty good stuff.
Well, I'm tempted to say that the phrase Louisiana Watergate is a redundancy. But yeah, I think there are people that have a lot of explaining to do, and this does have the feel of something where if you pull a thread, some interesting garments are going to come unraveled, and everybody's going to be very interested to see where it goes.
Telephone repairman outfits and pimp outfits. Those are the garments in question. Howard Fineman of Newsweek and MSNBC, as we compete to see who can get the Huey Long Award in this particular scandal in Louisiana. Thank you, Howard.
You're welcome, Keith.